Welcome to the Tech Beyond Gender podcast. Today I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome our guest Macushla Howell. Mac is currently the head of data at New Zealand Post and has over a decade of experience leading data teams across New Zealand. Known for her clarity, kindness, and strategic thinking, Mac recently took a career break to travel across Europe, a journey she calls one of the best decisions she's ever made. Today, we are diving into that adventure, the power of pause, and how stepping away can sometimes be the most enriching move forward. Thank you so much, Mac, for your time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Meena. It's a real pleasure to be here talking to you about topics like this.
Great. Now, let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up? And what were you curious about as a child?
I come from a rural farming community. I grew up in Southland, and my extended family are all farmers. And my mother tells me that from the time I could speak, I wanted to know why about everything. And I was apparently never satisfied with her first answer. She would have to give me all of the information. So I think my curiosity has been there right from the very beginning. And I can still remember the first chapter book that I read all by myself. I was about 7 years old. It was called The Pear Tree. And I finished it one night and was just the joy and the satisfaction I still remember it to this day, of completing my first book I read.
Awesome. So, what you just said told me just sort of explains why you're in data.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Data is, I sort of came to it from a sideways role, really. I started my career in market research, which again was such a great industry for me to be in, because basically I got paid to ask questions. And I did that for about 10 years before moving in an agency, before moving into client side. And I spent most of the time looking over the fence at what my analytics colleagues were doing and wanting to take the insights I was getting from customers and join it up with the analytics information that we had internally. And then from there, my curiosity led me to, well, where do they get their information from? And how does the data world work? And then before I knew it, I was leading my first data engineering team. And I can remember being so surprised that I got offered the role, because I wasn't a data engineer. I didn't know how to code, but I did know how to lead people. And the line that really got me, I guess, on board with the role was my manager at the time. The manager offering me the role said, "This is the job that you don't know that you want. It's going to be the best job you ever had." And about 3 weeks into the role, I said to her, "This is the job I didn't know I wanted, the best job ever." And she's like, "I know, I told you." And it just went from there. I just love it. There's always so much to learn. Yeah, I can't imagine being anywhere else.
Not even Europe?
Maybe again.
Yeah, no, you took a really big, bold step, taking a year off from work and going out traveling. Now,
Yeah.
what inspired that decision?
Well, to be honest, it was really a very long term held goal for our family. So my partner, Aaron, and I had been talking about taking a sabbatical for about 10 years. And going away for such long periods of time like that do take planning and preparation and the power of compound interest, because the goal was not to work if we could avoid it, to really immerse ourselves in the countries that we were visiting, and so therefore to be present. So what we did was we actually bought a camper van so that we had a lot of flexibility around where we could go and what we would do. And the planning for that trip, like the really getting into the nuts and bolts, was probably about 18 months before we left. And what we wanted to do was have what we called anchor experiences. So 2 or 3 key experiences throughout the year that we would plan and sort of maybe book accommodation, and the rest being flexible, where we could go and follow our noses, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And it was really a family experience. So my older daughter, Olivia, is at university. And so she joined us for the university break. And we didn't do a calendar year. We actually left in December and came back in November, because one of our anchor experiences was to do a ski season in the French Alps. We're a skiing family, and so my daughter got to join us for that part of the journey before heading back to university. And then my partner Aaron and my son James and I carried on with the rest of the adventure. And it was great to have her for that early part of the trip, and then for us to kind of carry on. Yeah.
Wow, sounds amazing. Was there a moment during your travel where you thought, wow, this is exactly what I needed?
Many, actually quite a lot, but because we love to ski, the skiing was really multiple times I would be up at the top of a run, and I would look out, and it was just so incredibly beautiful. The sky was an amazing blue. The trees are covered in snow, and the sun would be shining, and it was so making me feel so alive that here I am, to be so blessed to be in this beautiful place with my family doing something that gives me such joy. Skiing for me is very mindful activity. You cannot be anywhere else, because otherwise you'll have a fall. So you have to be very present, and the wind is on your skin, and it's just magic. But yeah.
So, how was your day like? So, you obviously chose not to work while you were traveling for a year. So,
Yeah.
1 year, like, how was your entire day?
Yeah. So because our son was 8, we had applied for a long stay visa for France, and that meant we didn't have to worry about having to leave the country and come back in for periods of time. And one of the conditions for that was that he needed to be enrolled in school. French are quite strict with schooling for their children. And so because we don't really speak French and we weren't going to be in one location, we actually were enrolled in Te Kura, which is the New Zealand correspondence school. And it is an incredible school. We had a teacher. James was part of a international class, so kids all over the world that he would connect with sort of once every week or 2 weeks, while having access to all of the teaching material that we would then work our way through, kind of at our own pace. So the ski season was really from about January through till about April. And most days we would get up, do a bit of schoolwork, get all our ski gear together and head out up the mountain. And the luxury of actually being there for an entire season meant that we could go for a few hours. We weren't time constrained. It wasn't, goodness, we're only here for a week. And if the weather was terrible, there wasn't the pressure to go out and ski anyway because of that time constraint. And so it was, I'll be honest, the homeschooling was not always a positive interaction when your mother is the teacher. But it meant that our son sort of came back into the school year sort of no further behind than when he had left. And it really gave some structure to the day, sort of get the schoolwork out of the way and then on we go. So yeah, that was sort of the first part of the trip. Yeah.
So any unexpected lessons from the road that shifted your perspective on work and life?
Yeah, the other key anchor experience that we did was we had this absolutely bonkers idea to walk the Camino, Santiago de Camino. It is a pilgrim walk across northern Spain that people have been walking for hundreds of years. The most common route is what's called the French Way. You start in France on the other side of the Pyrenees and you walk right across. It's about 780 kilometers. And we thought, right, let's give it a go. We had actually seen a documentary about 10 years prior of people walking the Camino, and we thought, let's give it a go. And that was really the highlight for me. I tried going into that experience with as little expectation as possible because our son was only 8. I had no idea whether he'd even be able to walk one day, let alone 49 days, which was how long it actually took us. And he walked the whole way, 780 kilometers. He carried his own bag, and the change in all of us was amazing. We really actually got to the end of it completely unwound. We were very relaxed. We were, I guess, very mindful. And I think one of the really key moments for me was often people would join the trail along the way and walk parts of it. Mm-hmm. And you would meet people and you'd think, oh, goodness, they seem quite uptight. And then you'd start talking to them and you'd realize this was their second day. Mm. And then you'd go, they hadn't unwound from their everyday life. And then you would see them because you would run into people, frequently along the way. And you would see them, further down the trail, and you could see the difference, the unwinding that had happened while they were walking. And it sounds like you just get up, you walk, you eat, you sleep, you wash your clothes, and then you do it over and over and over and over again. But what it gave our son was an opportunity to really unplug from digital devices and have the luxury of unstructured thinking. Even now, we walk after dinner every day. It is now part of our everyday life. And the kinds of questions that he would ask at the beginning were about Minecraft characters. And over the course of our Camino walk, it would shift to how fast do rockets go? Do you think that when we go and live on Mars that there will be 100 people living there or 200 people living there? He'd want to talk about the different gases that were in the atmosphere. It was this noticeable shift in his thinking, which I can't even know whether that would have happened anyway, but it was amazing to be a part of and watch that change.
So, what was so special about this walk, which sort of really relaxed people?
I imagine it's like a meditation retreat where you are reduced down to the basic components of life: sleeping, eating, washing, moving your body. The scenery is just stunning. You're in nature, and the landscape changes dramatically as you travel across the country. And you meet other travelers as you're going along. But you realize that while you are all having the same destination and the same experience, every single person's journey is unique, which is really what life is. And so the quietness and the repetitiveness of the walking enables you to really connect in with who you really are. You've removed all of the trappings and you go, actually, I'm not too shabby underneath it all. And one of the things that Aaron and I really noticed when we first came back from our trip, so we arrived back in New Zealand in November last year, and it has been a tough year for everybody. It really had. And we had several people say to us, oh, well, this was a good year to, not be here. And we were so aware of the strain and the stress and the pressure that our friends and family and colleagues and people in our communities, you could feel the weight of it. And we talked a lot about how we might make changes in our lives to try and hold on to that inner quietness or centeredness, I guess. We're sort of now 6-7 months on, and both are back into very, busy jobs and busy lives. And I feel I have retained some of that inner quietness more than I thought I would. I anticipated it might dissipate sooner. Often you hear that from people who come back from meditation retreats and they are able to hold it for a period of time and then it starts to fade away. And I think for me, having very tangible items in my home to remind me. So my work desk, this little statue, which is the wayfinders along the Camino route, so that you follow the markers. And I have that sitting on my work desk as a tangible reminder of that state. You know, not always like that, but it really helps for me to really anchor in and remind myself of the importance of that grounding. Yeah.
Wow, this is just absolutely amazing. I see a huge difference in you, Mac, the way you're speaking as well. You're just absolutely present and totally conscious of every word that comes out from your mouth. It's amazing.
It is something, I'm glad you give me that feedback, because it is something I was very aware of, that I wanted to use to hold on to. I know that I can talk very quickly and use a lot of hand gestures when I'm talking. And that I found, particularly when I first came back, how fast some people talked. And I thought, oh, I'm going to have to intentionally focus on talking slower to keep my mind slower and calmer. That doesn't always hold true. Often, if I'm really passionate about a subject, I will speed up and the hands start moving around. But it's the intention to be consciously careful or mindful of my words, has really helped also with holding on to that grounding.
Yeah, it's just absolutely amazing how you as a person has just completely changed with the travel, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's difficult to get to that space without some quietness, without some time away. I think it's possible, but I think it's harder. Yeah.
Now, can you share a standout memory from your trip besides this Camino walk?
Yeah, we as I mentioned, I talked about these anchor experiences. Another anchor experience for us was attending some of the Olympic Games events in Paris, and that and so we got tickets for some of the events, and that required booking those tickets 18 months before we departed. And we looked for, well, first of all, we thought we need to go to the rugby sevens. New Zealand might make the final. But we also looked for events that were within an easy vicinity of each other for travel and not too many days apart, so that we could sort of be in Paris for the events and then exit when we were ready to go. So the other event we went to was tennis. It wasn't the semi-finals or the finals. It was a morning, round 3, something like that. And we turn up and you don't know who you're going to see. We got to watch the world #1 female player on the centre court, followed up by Rafael Nadal playing Djokovic. And I still get goosebumps even now saying that, because I'm not a big tennis fan, but I know who these people are. And watching this Nadal's really last game against this incredible tennis professional was mind-blowing. The speed that the serves were at 200 kilometers an hour was just stunning. And that's serendipity. I mean, let's go to tennis round #3. Oh, and we happen to see all of the world's, #1 men and #1 female play. Yeah, so that was mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing.
Really nice. Now, how did traveling and stepping away from the data world reshape your understanding about yourself?
Yeah, I think when you're younger and you're building your career, you can feel that you're not doing enough, or there's a pressure to be, drive, push yourself constantly. And stepping away made me realize that the leadership skills and qualities that I have are really timeless. I have crafted and honed those to the point where they are rock solid. And so this drive to, oh my gosh, I've got to be more and more and more, I have more confidence in those skills. Where the drive for learning and growth and that part of jobs and data, that is still the same, because this is a continuously moving space. I realized my curiosity was, I knew I'd always been curious, but this was kind of almost went on to steroids. I read 88 books in a year, and I read just really broadly. I read a lot of books about AI. I did actually quite a lot of books about Buddhism and different religions. And I think that our careers are going to be long. We're going to live longer than we have in the past. And the idea of retiring at 65, and if you live to 80, that's 15 years of your life not engaged or involved, or just kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. I think very differently about my career, in the sense of, yes, it's employment, but it's creativity, it's connection, it's engagement. It is more about expression of those values or experiences in whether or not I'm going to make it to the CEO role. I'm interested now more in working with great leaders and great organizations to deliver really great outcomes. I always was motivated by that before, but now it's even more so why I kind of get up and do the job that I do. And I guess I'm lucky. I found roles that align with my values. And so my job is fun. It almost isn't really a job. It's something I just get to do every day. Yeah.
Yeah, so while you were speaking, I could just relate to some of what you were saying, like how um going in that walk and your whole travel just sort of really relaxed you down, and like you're in that space of stillness, right? So I have been practicing meditation and breathing exercises for like last 20 years. And again, over a period of time, I've noticed that how I've become way more relaxed and calm and more still. And I've experienced exactly the same as what you have just explained. Like the more calmer and still you've become, you actually view career from a different perspective. It is about connection. It is about contributing. It is about making a difference, right? And that switch really gives you the enthusiasm to just wake up early and then just be excited about what you could do and what you could do to contribute. And I can just see myself like few years ago too, my perspective was a bit different. But over a period of time, I could just clearly see the difference. I just really feel that the more still and more calm you are, like that gives a bit of dynamism, which people might actually think it the other way around, right? If you're calm and still, you're not dynamic, but it's a reverse. The more calm and still you are, the more dynamic you become, and the more you can actually contribute to a workplace.
Yes. There's less noise in my head than there had been in the past.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It is you have more energy. And the things that are defined as being stressful, the busyness, the lots and lots of meetings, I don't see them as stressful as I used to. And that hasn't changed, right? The outside things have not changed. But my perception of them, my response to them has. And this is actually a really valuable conversation for me to have reflected on these kinds of topics that yeah, and how I think differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually a very good conversation for me as well, because this is making me think about the difference, because I don't think I've ever been this busy in my life than ever before. And I am so much more relaxed about it, which is very different. And like I've taken up a more responsibility at work, and my manager was actually saying that like the amount of work that I've taken up, I'm actually causing more trouble to the other solution architects, because I've just picked up way too much responsibility and work. And I also do take Beyond Gender and a few other things outside, like teach mindfulness through the art of living. So it's like despite being this busy, there is that centered calmness is there, which is exactly what we are talking about, right? But we have probably got to that space by different paths, And which is really beautiful, right? Like, you know that the destination
Yes,
is the same, but then there are different ways to get there.
exactly. And and I think some of it is probably age as well. But when you have these sort of journeys, the realization of what's actually important and where you choose to. One thing I thought very carefully about is what if I had a word for this year? What would that word be? I've never done that before. It sounds a bit silly. I thought it was a bit silly, but for me, the word for this year is being intentional, being more intentional. Stepping in and leaning in more. That doesn't mean leaning into all of the little noisy things. And I think in the past, I would find those little noisy things distracting and think I had to do them all. I now am much more comfortable with the fact that there are 29 unread emails sitting in my inbox. I would not have been able to leave those unread before. I am more intentional about when I'm checking my emails. And that is something that, you get told your whole career. Oh, block time out to just only read your emails at certain times of the day. And we all sit there and we say, oh, yes, 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 we'll do that. But we don't. Because part of that is there is a lot of energy created by that urgency. It's quite satisfying. It's, energizing. It's quite addictive, I think. And so stepping away helped cure me of that, because there wasn't 15,000 emails to read, and there wasn't, it also made both of us more conscious and aware of our social media addictions, and working more actively on weaning ourselves off those same sort of behaviors, really different stimulus. So yeah, and having more time for the things that are how we want to live our lives, I think. Yeah.
So when you first decided and you started planning 18 months before you packed and left, did you have any thoughts in your mind oh my God, is this the right thing I'm doing? How did you gather courage to take that break?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a pretty bonkers thing to do. Before I went on the trip, I was asked to do a bit of a presentation in my workplace we had a kind of a women's network, and it was mostly kind of talking about your careers. And I said, well, I want to talk about being brave. Because we talk about bravery, we talk about courage, but what we don't talk about is you do not feel those things when you're doing the brave, courageous thing. You feel those things after you've done the brave, courageous thing, when you look back. When you're doing them, you just feel like you're shit scared or having doubts, or comparing yourself to others, or judging, or whatever, all of the things. Bravery and courage at that point in time is not how you feel. And I think that I had to also walk my own talk. in any of my coaching conversations with my team members or people who sought me out, my question to them would be, well, how long are you going to be dead for? Because I don't know about you, I'm probably going to be dead quite a long time. And so this is it in this body at this time in this space, which meant I actually had to live that if I'm going to say it to people. And so I kept having that over in the back of my mind, you know, that I will never regret it. And there are obviously moments if you spend 9 months in a van with your family that you think, crikey, I'd like to not be here, because it's quite tight quarters. But I knew I would not regret it. I knew that, like all journeys or experiences, there were going to be amazing, wonderful times, and then there were going to be times that were not so great. But that's also good, because the not so great times make the great times even more sweet, because you have that contrast. Life is like that. That's just the way it is. And that, yeah.
Now, when you came back in November last year, did you even think, oh my God, well, how am I going to enter back into workforce after that time away?
Yes. I was really ready. I was really ready to re-engage, to connect with my colleagues, to get my brain working in a different way than it had been while I was away. I had this, this real energy there to sort of, to kind of get stuck into something hard. You know, the trip had hard moments in a different way. I was, the joy and the satisfaction that you get in a work challenge, you know, when you're doing something hard and you sit there in the middle of it and you think, I don't know how the hell we're going to pull this off. I don't really know quite where this is going to go. That messy middle. And then when you come through the other side and you deliver a great outcome, there's something really fun about that when you're doing that with people, with great teams. And so I was really looking forward to kind of getting back into that. And I'm, again, extremely lucky. I know you're not supposed to say that, but I have landed in an incredible team at New Zealand Post with some great leaders. We've got some really interesting challenges, like all organizations, navigating AI. What does our data landscape need to be in order to deliver that safely and at scale? And there's a real energy and passion to make things better. I am not a particularly competitive person with others, but I'm very competitive with myself. I like figuring out how I can be better today than I was yesterday. And so that continuous improvement aspect of a work life is something I get a lot of energy and satisfaction from personally. So, I was ready. Yeah. My son, not so excited about heading back to the classroom after having more free time.
Yeah.
Have to be honest.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give someone considering a career break but feeling unsure?
I'm going to say go for it, of course. I think the thing is that we often think it needs to be really big, this really big event, as opposed to maybe a 3-month period of time or a 6-month period of time. But the other thing I would say, and I would be saying this to leaders and managers as well, to be supportive of your team members who want to do these sorts of things, because it creates opportunities for growth and development for others in your organization. Secondments. I think we underestimate the value that a secondment can give to a person's career. So I took a 12-month leave of absence, which provided an opportunity for one of my colleagues to step into my role. And that broadened them out in terms of their skill set and their knowledge across the data value chain. And reconnecting with them when I got back, the growth I saw in them was incredible because of that, having had that experience. And if that hadn't happened, it's hard for people to broaden out without those temporary spaces to slot into. And I think going forward, that's going to be really important for our workforce in general, to have more diverse skills and experiences for our leaders. And if we can't give them those hands-on experiences, it's difficult for them to gain them if they're having to stay in the roles that we have available or put them in permanently. Yeah. So don't be afraid. Yeah.
What changed in you as a leader after this break?
I'm not sure if it's a combination of age and the trip, probably a bit of both. I have stepped into more honest conversations than I would have in the past, being more clear and direct, with kindness and empathy. I previously found that difficult because it felt like it was getting into, I would worry about coming across as being an angry woman. We don't like angry women. But it does all of us a disservice if we're not clear and direct. And it is respectful of others. And that can be having the difficult conversation that you need to have with someone where they may not be aware of how they're showing up. But equally, communicating thoughts and ideas more succinctly. So I think about career and development plans really in 3 pillars: is your technical skill development, your communication skill development, and then the internal development that you do. How do you, I guess, get out of your own way so that you can show up as your best self? So that communication pillar, we talk about it, but we don't, I don't think I had connected it to that need for quiet mental space, because the amount of thinking and planning and processing that needs to happen in order to have that clear communication is critical. And I don't think I had fully understood that before. So that is, for me, I think one of the biggest differences. Yeah. I've always been okay with saying I don't know, but now I am more comfortable saying I don't know and going and kind of finding out and circling back. So treating that as a two-way development kind of conversation, I guess.
Now, how do you define success? Is it different to how it was before your time off?
Um, I don't think it's that different. Success had always been about living and doing what aligned with my values. I spend a lot of time, I talk about values a lot because I can see how if you're not clear on your values, how that can turn up negatively in the way we behave, particularly if someone behaves that it violates a value that we have that we may not be aware of. So I had spent a lot of time prior to the trip getting clear on what my values were. And success, I think, now is being healthy in old age. And that doesn't come with a silver bullet. It's really back to those stock standard basics of drink your water, eat your vegetables, move your body, keep your mind active. And so a good day is when those things happen. I have, when those things happen. I think the thing that I have done differently this year is looked to book in ahead small adventures. So had this great big adventure, but was actually made up of smaller adventures. And so to kind of keep that going, this continual small adventure experience, I realized for me, I would need to book events in ahead of time because otherwise the busyness, oh, suddenly I've got a weekend next weekend, what am I going to do? So things like I booked opera tickets and I booked a play ticket in July and a weekend away with my mother and my mother-in-law in November. And so these little adventures. Yeah. But being flexible, that's this year's things to do. Whether I continue them next year, I'm not sure. Or do something different. I think it's making sure I don't just add to this long-running to-do list. Not life isn't a to-do list. Yeah.
This is so amazing. I think I'm going to consider traveling as well now, having had this conversation with you. Just before we finish off, I have a couple of fun questions for you. Now, if you could teleport your team to any one European city for a data retreat, where would it be?
We spent a lot of time in France and Spain. So I would probably have to say somewhere like Barcelona. I was only there for a few days, but it's such a beautiful, vibrant city. The food is great. They have beautiful beaches nearby. It has incredible architecture. And I could imagine my team getting out and exploring and enjoying the vibrancy of that. Yeah.
Nice. So now what's the best dish or dessert you tasted during your travels?
Oh, goodness. You can't go past a good French bakery. My son and I just got obsessed with baguettes and little French fruit tarts. In fact, when we got home, we'd been home a couple of months, and I said something about a baguette, and he said, "Oh, Mum, don't. Just, just don't." Yeah, even the butter, French butter, smells like butter.
Mm.
Yeah, it was the simple things, I think. Yeah.
And lastly, passport, laptop, or playlist. Which one would you grab first for your next adventure?
Well, I think I'm going to be New Zealand grounded for a little while, so I would have to say playlist for the road trip.
Cool, great. Thank you so much, Mag. It was so awesome to have this conversation with you. And
Too.
yeah, I'm so glad we made time for this.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. I really enjoyed our conversation.
It it opened up some insights I hadn't fully appreciated or realized myself. So thank you.